You've heard us say, and you've heard other people say as well, that we are divine. We are God in essence. We are consciousness itself. How do we go so wrong? How do we get to feeling depressed? How do we get to feeling hopeless, powerless? When, if we are those things, why do people suffer? Why is the world in such difficulty? How does that happen? Well, we begin with ignorance, because ignorance of all suffering. It is, and here I don't mean ignorance just in a negative sense, right? A friend of mine used to say when we were in college and learning all these things, he used to say we're all ignorant only on different topics, right? I don't know your business, perhaps you don't know mine, that kind of stuff. Everybody has these blind spots that they're ignorant on. But in general, if we think about suffering, human beings are ignorant of that fact that we mentioned, that you are consciousness, you are the divine, you are that powerful awareness that pervades the whole universe. Ignorance of that then sets off a whole chain reaction that leads people to those states of hopelessness, powerlessness, getting lost in the maze of creation. Because from ignorance of that higher principle, of higher knowledge, arises this attraction and repulsion. I don't remember, as a kid, I don't remember anybody sitting me down and saying, this is how the universe works, and this is how your mind works. I remember I must have been about 5 or 6, and I was walking to school, and I was passing this church, and they had a loudspeaker, and they were saying that part about this bread is my flesh, eat it, and this wine is my blood, drink it. And I heard it, of course, literally as a child. I thought, oh, these people are cannibals. So those kind of ideas, right, they're spoken of metaphorically, but they're never explained in an actual context of what does that mean. So most of us reject the religions that we grew up with. It's part of that rebellious kind of phase that we go through.
Or non-religions.
Yeah, that too. Whatever our parents kind of believed, we reach a point where we want to reject it, we want to get away from it. So attraction and repulsion simply means that, like Freud said, we're operating on the pleasure principle. Whatever we find pleasurable, we think, that's the good stuff. I need more of that. I need more coffee. I need more croissants or whatever. More sleep. Yeah. Whatever feels good. And we start to think, we just by implication, that we're onto something. That we found a way to happiness. because this makes us feel good somehow. And of course, we're off the tracks already, because we're basing our assumptions on the ignorance of this higher principle. Our mind works on that pleasure principle, right? That if something is pleasurable, then its opposite must exist. We automatically bring it into being, but because we're operating on ignorance, then we're assuming that the quality is in the object itself instead of our preference. Right? We're assuming that if we don't like something, it's because the object is inherently negative or bad. And that's not true. Objects are neutral. Everything in the universe is neutral. It's our mind that's projecting this attraction and repulsion onto it. And that point you were making about watch out who you're hanging out with, because your mind is absorbing that continuously. Even if you're not conscious of it, or if you consciously try to block it, you literally can't, because your body, your mind body is reading their mind body continuously and trying to kind of match their state of mind. So once we get into this conditioning from attraction and repulsion, this gives rise to the ego, or that sense of I. And ego is very good in working this out, right? It knows what it finds attractive, and it knows what it finds repulsive. It uses a very shorthand to make split decisions about what it wants and what it doesn't want. And it becomes automatic. And that's the ego that most people are using to operate in the world. This conditioned mind of I. It becomes their identity. They believe this I, who is experiencing good and bad, is who I am. So now we see that the roots of it is this ignorance of the higher principle, which leads to this splitting of the world into good and bad, attraction and repulsion, that gives rise to this false sense of I. And by the time we know it, we're so conditioned that we can't see outside that bubble of I. And the hard conditioning of, I know what's good and I know what's bad. Then according to the way the mind works, which essentially structures the world for us and gives it meaning, when we're conditioned this way and we're seeing the world through the ego, it's giving us a very clear reflection of our own conditioning. In other words, it is confirming our conditioning, and we're saying, you see, I was right all along. The world is nasty, the world is friendly, whatever our conditioning is, it's going to reflect that back to us in a very concise and clear way. In a very concrete way, to where we think, well, I'm feeling it, I'm seeing it, how can I deny it? And so people get stuck. That's how we get stuck. But the root of it is this ignorance. So a lot of people think, well, I'm going to try to work with the ego. That's not enough, right? The way I was trained in therapy was cognitive behavioral therapy. It's counteract the thoughts of the ego. Right? If it tells you you're not good enough, counteracted with,
I'm good enough.
I like myself.
and people like me.
I'm a good person.
It doesn't get at the root. Yeah, you might be able to make some headway with the automatic thoughts a little bit, but it's not going to get at the problem. The root is ignorance. It's just like a plant that's the roots of it. Absolutely, it's that materialistic paradigm that the senses give us. Because if we go by the senses, simply what we're able to observe, it just tells us, well, there's these things out there called objects and these other people, and they're separate from me. And remember that principle that we assume that the quality of good and bad is inherent in the object. And that is not so. Because if it was so, then everyone would be in love with Deborah.
Oh, but they are.
Because, that would be the principle, right? That the good quality is inherent in the object. That's what the senses tell us. It's a powerful illusion, right? When we see it and experience it, it just feels like, well, it's obvious. Can't you see that, those...
That person is a terrible person.
Yeah.
Or a great person.
Exactly. But we know just from logical experience, we go to a museum and we see a work of art. One person loves it and the other person hates it. The quality is not in the work of art. It's in the observer. Yeah. So you multiply this principle by 7 billion people. That's why you have political parties fighting each other, wars, on and on, right? Because people just assume that their point of view is correct and that the other point of view is wrong. Where, it's just based on that assumption that the object is inherently bad or good.